Thank you, everybody, for joining in on this evening's webinar. Um, one of the common questions that I'm getting as of late is I really seem to get it all the time, but I'm getting it more and more lately is how to feed on a budget. As I mentioned last week, and as I mention every time I talk about this topic, um, there's nothing inexpensive about owning a horse. So, we should start our presentation with I want to be open and honest that there's no way to cut corners when you own a horse. And the what happens when you cut corners is you'll end up costing yourself money in the long run. So what I want to go over is how do we feed our horses more efficiently? And when we're looking at feeding the horse, it's not just what we're feeding them, we have to step back and look at our whole program. Do we pay somebody to come in and feed and clean stalls and do those kinds of things? And if we do, are we wasting their time? Are we making them open 15 different buckets um, to mix up the feed? So are we making it overcomplicated? The other thing is people are going to have a tendency to want to, oh, I'm just going to go down to the local tractor supply and buy the cheap feed. Um, but by the time you add a bunch of stuff to it to get the desired outcome in your horse, you haven't really saved a lot of money. In the horse business, we tend to put blinders on because we just don't even want to know how much it costs. So we have to really look at our horses a little bit more like the other livestock industries do, um, and really look at all every expense and break it down and how much does it cost to keep each horse per day. We are not going to look at the price of a bag of product unless we're using that to break down into how much does it cost to feed that horse per day, because we can get caught up in the and this is where whether it comes to a price of a bag of feed or a price of a bag of supplement, we can't look at our budget that way. We have to look at our budget as in how much is it going to cost to feed my horse every day. And so I've got a lot of examples here. Now the dollars that I've used, they might not be accurate for your area, but the main purpose when I show you these examples is I'm showing you how what math you're going to do. What's the calculation you're going to do? You can, if you're fancy, you can set up a little spreadsheet. I've done that before, and then you just plug in kind of the prices. But we'll work out what math oh, we need to do, and then where you can plug your own numbers in. For maybe you're feeding oats and you get them for X dollars a bag, but somebody else from California gets them for 3 times that price. So maybe you grow your own hay, but that doesn't mean it's free. You've still put input into that, so there's still a value to it. So we will go ahead and get started. Now, we also need to know the basics of the horse's feeding program, right? And so the forage is the absolute most important part of the horse's diet. And in order to feed your horse correctly, then all we're doing is adding concentrated feeds and supplements to balance what you are or not getting out of your forage. So it's really ideal if you can do a hay test first, or you can buy hay that has been tested. Now, the market is pretty hot. Everything's pretty expensive. Hay's expensive. But I know myself, I have cattle and I have 2 people that I buy hay for the winter from. And this year, the price is about the same from both of them. So I've asked them both for a hay test on their hay, and I'm going to buy the hay that meets my needs most accurately. So, and you notice I didn't say I'm going to buy the best hay. I am going to buy the best hay because to me, what the best hay is the hay that meets my animals' needs, my cows' needs. My cows are so fat that I don't actually need a hay that's really high in calories and nutritional value. I need something for them to chew on all day when there's no grass in the fields. Maybe you have fat ponies and it's the same way. You need something for them to chew on that's low in sugars, low in calories. Or maybe you have brood mares or horses that are hard to keep, and then you do need to lean towards the good hay for you is a hay that's higher in calories. So when you're getting a hay test, don't always just lean towards the hay that has the highest protein and calories and nutritional value. If you have a choice, make sure you're choosing the hay that is most appropriate for your horse. So we need to, and then we need to choose the correct product to complement your forage and meet the needs of your horse. We also all fall into the trap of, well, my trainer feeds this and my farrier feeds that, and the lady at the feed store said I should feed this. None of them own your horse, right? Your trainer doesn't actually own your horse either. They ride your horse, but they don't feed your horse. You feed your horse, and your barn manager feeds your horse. So we need to make sure that we are choosing the correct products for your horse. And I think that as dealers, when we're talking to our customers, that's also something that we need to. Oh, well, what do you do? Well, I do this for my horse that has all of these requirements, but it's very important for you to ask the questions. Tell me about your horse or your group of horses. Tell me about your needs. Tell me about your personal needs. Don't be afraid to ask all the questions because you want a customer for the long term that feels like you're part of their team and not someone that just wants to make a quick buck and sell one bag of orange and see you later. So, anybody who has called me and asked for an evaluation of the horse, how do I feed my horse? What should I feed? This and that. You will all know that not only do I ask questions about your horse, let's say it's a horse that needs to gain weight, for example, and I find out what you're currently feeding. One of the first things that I do, if you're already feeding plenty of grain, is I ask you, is it possible for you to split up that amount of grain into multiple meals? Let's say you're feeding 2 meals now. Can you feed 3 or 4 meals? And sometimes the answer is no, because people work and they simply cannot go out to the barn 3 or 4 times a day. So we also need to be asking, horses don't feed themselves, right? It's people that have budgets, they have constraints maybe for the barn that they're boarding at, and they also have financial constraints. So we need to make sure that we're selecting the correct product for the whole package, for the horse and owner together. So when we're selecting the correct product for our animal, or we're trying to help a customer select the correct product, um, we need to know the animal's age. Is it a young growing foal or is it a senior? So the young growing foal has high protein and energy and vitamin and mineral requirements because he's growing. And the senior horse, he also has higher protein requirements because he's got some muscle wasting. And he's just not as able to digest a lot of his food, so we need to supply him with some more nutrients. Body weight and body condition. Now, body weight, we need to know because we need to accurately feed the horse the correct amount of product. My feeding directions on the DAC products are all based on a 1,000-pound animal. If your horse is 500 pounds and you're feeding him what you should feed a 1,000-pound horse, you're wasting some money because you don't need to feed that much. Or if you're feeding a horse that's 1,500 pounds, the amount that you should be feeding a 1,000-pound horse, then we should feed some more. And feeds, vaccinations, deworming, all is based on your horse's body weight. What body weight doesn't tell you, though, is the level of condition on your horse. So I could tell you my horse is 500 pounds. Well, that doesn't really tell you anything about it. Because what if it's a pony who's really fat, or it's a shire who's more, emaciated? So we need to have body condition as well, because we also then, if the horse is anywhere from, say, a 1 to a 4, then he's thin and we're probably going to have to put some weight on him. But if he is a 7, 8, or 9, then he's a bit fat. We don't want to waste money adding a lot of extra supplements that are going to make him fatter. But if he's a 5 or a 6, then he's perfect in the middle. So it's really important we know body condition. Activity level is also really important. Just because you sweat when you ride your horse does not mean that he is working hard. And I don't really need to know what discipline you do. It's not to say I don't care what discipline you do. I'm very interested and I can glean a little bit about the intensity, but ultimately I need to know the amount of hours of work a horse does per week and the intensity. Okay, so we just walk. I ride him on trail rides about 3 hours a day, and we have the weekends off, but we just walk, right? And that's one level of exercise. Or he's doing speed training for barrel racing, and we really don't exercise that long every day, but it's really at high speed. Um, so I really need to know more about the amount of hours of work per week and the intensity. All of this is really important so that we can select the correct products for your animal. And why is selecting the correct product important? Because this is how you save money. You don't save money by cutting corners, you save money by feeding your horse the correct product and not something that's ideal for a completely different type of horse. So judging body condition score, ideally you would take, these are all the areas on a horse that he lays down fat: over his crest, his withers, his over his ribs, flank area where you do up the girth, shoulder, hip over the above the tail. These are all the areas. And so in grad school they teach you that you should kind of assign each one of these areas a score between 1 to 9, and then you average them all out. Well, I'm terrible at math in my head, so I don't do that. And in on a farm, you're not doing that. You're just looking at the whole horse and in your mind averaging it all out and giving him one score. This is a horse with a body condition score of 1, and hopefully you don't ever see this. But I guarantee everybody watching right now is looking at this picture thinking, oh, oh, that's sad. That's just not great. Oh, that's an awful picture. And when we get to a horse that's a body condition score of 9, no one's going to have those same responses though. But a fat horse is way more dangerous than a thin horse. Just put that out there. This thin horse, it's not hard to see this horse is really, really skinny and he's probably depressed and has a lot of eye and nose discharge. 2, he's starting to perk up a little bit. He's still very thin, but you see he's got a little bit more even coverage. The other thing I'll tell you about body condition scoring is that you need to put your hands on the horse. You shouldn't be just scoring them from pictures. You need to touch the horse, especially when they get a little heavier. It's really important to be able to press on the horse and see how far do I have to press to feel the ribs? Do I have to really press hard, or are they just under there? Because as the horses get more coverage, then it's their body shape or breed that can change what they look like. 3, still too thin. 4, now some people, I see a lot of this horse. I see them in high level endurance competition, some race horses, and this is peak condition for them. Most of our horses, though, this is too thin. But maybe you've got some yearlings that we're really worried about OCDs and growth problems, and we keep them on the lighter side. Then this is not going to be too thin then. But for the most part, we would like to put a little extra cover on this horse. Now, a 5 or a 6 is ideal. Perfect condition, even coverage. You might not like the style of this horse, but look at the horse. None of the bones are sticking out, even coverage everywhere, not too fat. If you touch the horse, there's no big squishy pockets in any of those areas, like over the withers or the girth or the point of the hip or anything. When you touch this horse, it's even all over, and I don't have to push hard over the rib area to find the ribs. This horse is also ideal body condition score. Now this, we have a thoroughbred versus a quarter horse, right? And we all know that they look completely different. The quarter horse has more muscling, more solid appearance. Um, but when you feel him, he doesn't feel too different to the horse that we just saw. So they're not that different in their body condition. Their shape is different, but when you put your hand on the horse and feel them, they're really not that different. But 5 and a 6, these are perfectly conditioned horses. Now, when we get to a 7, if this is a brood mare, then we don't want her to get any fatter, but we're certainly not going to take a bunch of weight off her. You can also see this horse, completely different horse to the 2 we've seen. He's kind of got a lighter hindquarter and he carries more of his weight from his flank forward because that's just his shape. He's very deep back, got a bigger barrel. I'm sure it's got a big long girth, but through his flank, he's pretty skinny. So but again, if you feel this horse, he's got squishier fat pads, big squishy fat pad on that white patch there. His withers are barely visible, and he's too fat. 8 and a 9, these horses are very, very fat. Now, look at this horse here. This horse was on metabolic trials at the University of Tennessee. And most of you just look at this horse and, oh, he's fat. But nobody has the same guttural response as they do when they saw a horse with a body condition score of 1. I will guarantee you this horse in front of you is at much more risk. This horse is going to cost you a whole lot more than the horse with a body condition score of 1. Because that horse, we feed it, it doesn't have any kind of long lasting ailments from being thin. He's going to get fat and he's going to be fine, or he's going to put on weight and he's going to be a perfect condition. He'll be fine. This horse at a body condition score of 9 with that huge cresty neck, who's been diagnosed with insulin resistance and Cushing's and metabolic syndrome and you name it, he's got it, and he can't go out on the pasture during the spring, and the owner has to the board manager has to soak the hay for him because he's got to have low sugar and he's got to have all these different supplements. This horse is expensive, right? He can't go out with anybody else because they get hay and he's not allowed that kind of hay. The drugs are expensive, the care is expensive, the heartache is even worse when it all goes down the tubes. So this is a dangerous horse. And even when you do get the body weight off this horse, his hormonal profile has forever changed. So we need to start shifting our idea of what is healthy and what is not, and what is going to cost us money and what is not. And this horse is expensive. I look at this horse and think, nope, nope, nope. So I also need to know about your current feed. What hay are you feeding? What type of hay are you feeding? Is it a Timothy? Is it an orchard grass? Is it a local mixed hay? Is it an alfalfa? Um, do you by chance have a hay analysis done on it, like a chemical analysis, so we know what the protein and energy is? If not, is that something you could get done? Or, I mean, a lot of feed companies will offer that for free, trying to solicit your business. They'll offer that for free. So there are ways that you can get that done. Sometimes even your local extension office will help you with that, but that can be very helpful. Are you feeding a concentrate grain? So are you feeding any of the commercial concentrates, or are you feeding a straight grain like a corn or an oat or a barley? Is that processed? Is it like flaked corn, or is it whole oats or rolled oats? I need to know that. What supplements are you feeding? And I need to know why you're feeding those supplements as well, because sometimes we'll say, "Ooh, you have an issue that you're trying to address, but that supplement is not going to be helping that. We need to be switching to this supplement, which is actually going to give you the benefits that you desire." I need to know, hay, concentrate, grain, supplements, how many pounds and ounces you're feeding, not scoops. As you can see from my picture, these are all different scoops that, if you fill them all with oats, they're all going to weigh completely different and offer the horse completely different nutritional profiles. So when you call me and say, I'm feeding a scoop in the morning and a scoop at night, I have no idea what you're talking about. You can at least try and give me, well, it's a 1 quart scoop and I fill it to the top morning and night. Then I can kind of work out um, an estimate of what the pounds is, but we need to know that. You also, if you have multiple people feeding in your barn, it's a good idea to have a day where everybody comes together, or even if they're not coming together, take a scale out to the barn. And if you know that all the horses on average are supposed to get about 2 pounds, when you fill the scoop up, it's 2 pounds. Um, and you've got some people giving 4 pounds and some people getting 1 pound based on their scoop. Why don't you take a scale out and have everybody weigh their scoop that their version of a scoop, and write it down. And then get them to tweak it so that we know it should be 2 pounds of oats, not 5 pounds of oats, because that also will waste you money. If you notice that some of your um, uh, bags of oats, I'm just using oats for an example, but it could be anything. Um, oh, well, we have rodents in the barn and it's really hard to get rid of them, and we're not storing the product in a good container, and we always have some loss. They always bust open a bag and there's oats on the floor. These are all just common sense little things that these are all ways to make sure you're saving money by not wasting it. And then I also need to know, does your horse have any special needs? Metabolic syndrome, does it tie up? Genetic disorders like HYPP, fat, thin. And what are your goals? Is the horse, he's a bit slow. I want him to be a bit peppier. He's too fat. I need him to lose weight. It's a mare. We haven't had any luck getting her pregnant. So what are the goals we're working with? Then we can make sure we're designing the most appropriate feeding program for that horse. And you can talk to your customer. And I'm saying this in kind of first person, like when you talk to me, but these are also the questions that you should be asking your customers. They're going to come to you, the dealer, and ask you the questions that you ask me when we're designing a feed program. So you need to be able to, this is kind of print these out, make sure or write them down, and we'll these are the questions you need to ask when somebody says, can you help me feed my horse and can you help me save money? We need to know all of this stuff before we can dig into it. So I said earlier that a lot of people are going to be tempted to pop on down to the Tractor Supply, whatever store they have, and get a bag of all stock. Now, I'll tell you straight up that you can feed this to sheep, cows, whatever else. Let's avoid feeding something that says all stock on it. Let's avoid feeding that to a horse. A horse has a completely different digestive system, and if you're tempted to buy a cheap feed, at least buy a cheap feed that's designed for a horse. But anyway, um, so all stock feed, it's really cheap, but what are you missing? You're missing so much stuff. And so we look at this graph here, and you can see that, and we'll see this over and over again on the bottom. Those letters that are all down there. The first bar is digestible energy. Then we've got crude protein and calcium, phosphorus, copper, zinc, selenium, manganese, iodine, lysine, vitamin A, and vitamin E. And what we're trying to look at and achieve with this picture is that we want all of those bars to touch that red line, that dark red line that goes across at the 100 there, that's on the left-hand side. And that will mean that 100% of that nutrient is met in that diet. So you can see here the digestible energy, or the calories that makes them fat or thin, that's pretty much being met in this diet, right? And that is also the only nutrient that horse owners can look at their horse and determine whether they're getting enough. You can look at your horse, is it fat or thin? Is it maintaining its body weight? And you can determine whether they're getting enough calories. But you cannot look at him and say, oh, he's getting enough copper, he's getting enough zinc, or he's not getting enough selenium, or whatever. Calories is how most people feed their horse. And you can see that, oh, well, I've got my local hay and I'm feeding my 6 pounds of this all stock, because I was feeding 6 pounds of a better feed before, or I had oats and some supplement. But this is way cheaper. And you can see now you've just shortchanged your horse on phosphorus and copper and zinc and selenium and manganese and iodine and lysine and vitamin A and vitamin E. And you're like, well, am I going to really notice anything in my horse? I guarantee copper, zinc, and selenium, your horse's feet are going to get bad. If your farrier bills aren't expensive now, they will be even more expensive later. So cutting corners costs you way more money in the long run. I will not be able to say that enough throughout the presentation. Now, when we did this last week, there were a lot of questions about Teff Hay, because I had originally looked at these hays because these are a variety of different hays that are very available in the West, and Teff Hay is becoming more and more popular around the country. Meadow hay, that's just your local grass hay. Alfalfa, we all know what alfalfa is. It's a legume. Beet, pulp, oats. These prices were from last year. We know these prices have significantly changed, and it just, who knows where you live, what they are, but you just put in your own numbers, okay? Teff Hay, though, we'll go back to Teff Hay because there were so many questions about what is Teff Hay. Teff Hay is a warm season grass, so it grows in the summertime. It's native to Africa, but we have been growing it here in America because it is very low in sugars and starches. Okay, so as we have tried to decrease the sugar and starch content of our equine diets, and we know that hay is the most important part of their diet, we have started to try and look for hays that are lower in sugars and starches. So some people feed teff. It's not available everywhere. Some horses completely hate it, but that is what teff hay is. Other hay that I have not, obviously there's Bermuda grass hay, and don't lump all Bermuda grass hays in together. Within Bermuda grass hay, there are a lot of different varieties. So coastal Bermuda grass hay is the one that seems to get a bad rap from everybody, but then there is Tifton and there's all these other different varieties. Coastal is also a Bermuda grass in general. It's a warm season grass, so it's also very low in sugars and starches. Coastal Bermuda grass, the specific species, is very fine. And one of the problems is it's so fine that it doesn't push on the horse's gut and engage the stretch receptors in the gut lining that it tell the lining of the intestine to push that food down. So impaction colic can be an issue with coastal Bermuda grass hay. What I recommend though is, I have a lot of clients that live in South Carolina or Florida or Georgia, and that's very available. And it's usually inexpensive. I say just mix it with some other hay that has a different physiology. Mix it with some alfalfa, mix it with some timothy or orchard grass, or even just a different meadow hay or local hay that is a little more solid and is going to engage those stretch receptors. So you don't have to be scared of feeding coastal. I just don't usually feed 100% coastal Bermuda grass hay. I mix it with other things, just like I don't feed 100% alfalfa. I always like to mix it. But you can see what I've done here. I've taken, and most people these days, if you're buying large quantities of hay, you're buying it by the pound anyway. We're not buying it by the bale. But if you're buying it by the bale, then we want to get a decent weight on that bale. And let's say the Teff Hay, for example, it was a 125-pound bale of hay, and it was $19 for that bale. So we divide $19 by 125, and we got 15 cents a pound, right? And that's what you want to do. You need to go through your hay and you need to work out how much it costs per pound. And you do that with beet pulp and oats and any other grain you're buying. Maybe you're buying commercial concentrate from the store, but you want to work out exactly how much it costs per pound. Then from there, we're going to build our diets. And you say, well, I'm going to feed 5 pounds of teff and 5 pounds of local hay, and I'm going to throw in 10 pounds of alfalfa, and we can add it up then, and we can then work out how much is my hay going to cost. I like to feed a bit of beet pulp, and I'm going to throw some of that in there. I like to feed oats, I'm going to throw some of that in there, and you can start to see, oh, look what it's costing me to feed my horses every day. Where can I cut some of that out, or where can I adjust? Maybe we should not be feeding beet pulp because it's really expensive where we're at, and we should be feeding more hay. There's always ways that we can, maneuver our diet to make sure we're still not cutting corners, meeting all of our horses' desired needs, not exceeding them. We don't need to waste money because the horse can only absorb a certain amount, and it's either going to get fat or poop it or pee it out. And you don't want either of those three scenarios. You want the horse to use what you give it and not waste anything. These pricings now, obviously, pricing always changes and it constantly changes. And I know it frustrates everybody, but when you go to the gas station every time, the price is different. It very rarely stays the same. And that's because gas prices change. Well, these products get shipped. Gas prices change, everything changes. Shipping costs changes. That has to be factored in. So prices change. Y'all just know that. Put your own prices in here because I know, maybe maybe you did a meeting and you got your price, put a big order in and you got your meeting prices, or you buy wholesale or whatever you do, you can put your own prices in here. Now, I will say, if you're a dealer and you want to get good prices, one way is to have a meeting. And it's real easy to have a meeting. You contact your territory manager and they can set that up. You can have an in-person meeting. You can even do a webinar. I can do a meeting for you online if you don't think you can, get a bunch of people in a room. But that's a good way to save some money as well, is invest in your business, have a meeting. But anyway, you can see what I did here as I took the bags of product and I said, and this is the only time I'm going to talk about the actual price of the bag as it is. And then I broke it down into how much, when we're talking about supplements, we're going to talk about how much it costs per ounce. So orange, when you buy it in a 5-pound bag, at this price, it worked out to be 44 cents an ounce. Now again, prices are always different, so put in your own price. But what I want to show you is the larger the quantity, just like anything, you buy in bulk, it's cheaper. So you look at that and you think, oh gosh, I can't spend 150 bucks for a bag. But it's 24 cents an ounce. It's significantly less expensive. And all of our products have a very long shelf life. As long as you don't put them out in the sun or the rain or the significant heat, these products are going to sit on the shelf quite happily for about 12 to 13 months, right? So even if you're a customer or you're encouraging customers to buy the larger quantities, they can store some at their house and they can have just a smaller baggie that they take to the barn with them, or they can go in it with their girlfriends and divvy it up. They're gonna split a 40-pound bag. These are ways that you can be more efficient, right? The oil, a 1 gallon, 28 cents an ounce. A 5 gallon is 19 cents. The DDA, 5-pound bag, 45 cents. 40-pound bag, 23 cents, right? It's half the price when you buy it in the larger quantity. And you think, oh, still, I'll just suck it up and pay a little bit more each day. It's totally fine. Okay, let's look at it. Let's really do the dollars and cents though, because you're not going to have a horse for a day or a week or a month. You're going to have them long term and you're going to feed them every single day. So let's just use the orange with the pricing that I've got here. I'll say it again. Prices always change, so these aren't the current prices. But a 5-pound bag at $35.28, because when I did this, this was the price. 2 ounces would be 88 cents. Okay, so I'm feeding my horse 2 ounces a day for a week. That's going to cost me $6.16. For a month, that's $26.40. And over 12 months, it's $321.20. Oh, but what if I bought the 40-pound bag? It was so much more expensive. No, it's not. 2 ounces worked out to be half the price at 48 cents. Over a week, that was $3.36. A month, $14.40. And over 12 months, it was $175. It literally is nearly half the price. It's $150 savings. So again, there's no way to cut corners, but there's a way to be more efficient when feeding horses. And I'll just show you some examples. So when I put this into my ration balancing program, and I can do this for you as well, and Everett can do this, is I took a horse doing light exercise, 1,000-pound, 1,100-pound horse doing light exercise. He was eating Teff Hay, the low carb hay, but you could put your own local hay in here, and based on the price, it was really just the pricing. But the diet's nicely balanced. This hay actually has quite a bit of protein in it, so that's a bit of a waste, and got quite a bit of calcium in it. But that was the hay that we had available to us, and I know that a lot of us just can't be picky or choosy about the hay. We just have to get what we can get, and then we build our diet from there. But 2 ounces of orange is all this horse needed because we bought good hay. And it cost me for the total diet with 48 cents of orange per day and $3 for hay. It's $3.48 over a week is $24.36 over a month. That's $100, and over a year it's $1,270 to feed a horse. So again, there's nothing cheap about feeding horses. And if you got 10 horses, then add a zero. Right? Basic math, add a zero. So it's expensive, but this is a cost-effective way to feed your horse. Oh, but we do a bit of alfalfa, we do a bit of meadow. I like to add a bit of beet pulp, which obviously I can't spell there. Adding the orange, and you can see simple is better. Simple is better, but we've got that same horse, and we got a bit of alfalfa, we got a bit of grass hay. We're doing some orange, 3 ounces of orange because my meadow hay wasn't as great a quality. Um, and then we put in some beet pulp as well, just to boost the quality of the fiber and get the calories up. But you can see now, we had to feed more orange because the nutrients weren't there in the hay, and we had to add a bit of beet pulp, and we had to add some alfalfa, and all of that was more expensive. So it cost us significantly more because we didn't have good hay to start with. It was now $2,100 a year. So again, when we're looking at buying hay, like my hay's gone up $20 a round bale, and I'll buy 50 round bales. Um, so it can really add up. But I know that feeding good hay, that's the foundation. That's how I can save money, by not having to add a bunch of extra grain and a bunch of extra stuff to keep weight on my animals. So Teff orange oats, because let's say this horse needs weight gain now, okay? And you can see all I'm doing, just because he needs weight gain doesn't mean he needs a bunch more nutrients, but he just needs more calories. So we've bumped up the calorie content of the diet by adding the oats. And you can see here, this diet, back to having decent quality hay, 2 ounces of orange, 4 pounds of oats at the price that I had. Now they could be completely different price for you. It's $4.88, and back to about $1,700 a year to feed this horse. Well, probably closer to $1,800. But this horse that I can put weight on is less expensive than this horse here that I had poor quality hay, and I had to add a bunch of other hay and fiber to make it better. So. Here's adding some alfalfa also instead of oats. Now, this is just to show you, okay, you can choose your calorie source, because ultimately the hay and the orange is going to give you your foundation. That's going to give you your fiber and the majority of your vitamins and minerals. And when you're looking for weight gain, you can choose alfalfa, you can choose oats, you can choose to use other calorie sources. But adding the alfalfa here was cheaper than the oats. It was $1,500, but it depends on the price. Maybe you can get really cheap oats. Um, when you start to add in beet pulp, I like beet pulp. I put it in a lot of commercial concentrates, but it's kind of expensive. So look at the ingredients you're adding and see, is there a different ingredient that will give me the same bells and whistles, that is a little less expensive. And usually, again, when we're adding all these different things, I'm adding a bit of alfalfa, I'm adding a bit of beet pulp, adding a bit of soy hulls or whatever I'm adding, then that gets back to my question earlier. Do you have somebody that's mixing the feed for you? And are you paying them hourly? And these days, you can't get away with paying people like $5 an hour. You're paying them a significant amount of money, and maybe you're paying them $15 an hour. And what if you have to pay them an extra hour every day because you've made this ridiculously hard feeding program? That's not simple. Then $15 a day really adds up. Um, so again, it's not necessarily just the feed we're putting in the horse's mouth, but $15 a day over 7 days that the guy comes or gal comes to feed your horses, an extra hour a day they're wasting, is an extra $100 a week that you're spending that you could have been spending on something else or saving. Um, If we look at something like our good hay, and I have teff here, but maybe it's orchard grass or timothy for you, just good quality hay that's meeting your needs. Orange and oil. Now, the oil may be a little bit more expensive to add, but here's when we have to kind of tease out what else are we getting out of the oil. So the oil as just a plain old calorie source in this diet is a little bit more expensive than the diet that had oats or alfalfa in it. But what you're not getting out of the oats is you're not getting vitamin E, and you're not getting a nice shiny hair coat. So you're not getting omega-3 fatty acids. And also the oil is really good if you've got a horse that has poor teeth. It's much easier for them to consume. So you've got to then look at what else am I getting out of it. If I'm feeding the diet that's got my hay, my orange, and my oats to put a little weight on the horse, but I really want him to be a bit shinier, or I want him to get vitamin E, or I want him to get omega-3 fatty acids as well. So then you would have to buy another supplement on top. Well, maybe I try the oil because it's got vitamin E and in it already, and it helps to make my horse's coat really shiny. Obviously, if oil is not what we want to do because we don't need significant, you don't want to add it. Some horses don't like it. Some people don't like it. In the summertime, if you live in a really hot climate, it can, people don't like to put it in the buckets if it gets sticky or flies or whatever. Everybody has their own ideas of what they do and don't want to do, but you want to add the E natural because you want to give them some extra vitamin E. Here's the breakdown. Ours is the most cost effective vitamin E. I've gone on SmartPack and I've looked at all of them. I've looked at SmartPacks. I've looked at Elevate from Kentucky Equine Research. Ours is the most cost effective natural vitamin E on the market. And, I don't have to go through all the ingredients here, but you can see what I've done. I have monetized every single part of the diet. And also, when I write it down like this, because a lot of times we're in the feed room and I'm just doing a scoop of this, I'm just doing a scoop of that, I'm doing a bit of this, doing a bit of that. You don't really know all of the things. Like, yes, because you're like scooping, scooping, scooping. But if you wrote it down on paper, you would scare yourself. And again, we're just sticking our head in the sand. So it's a good idea to write it all down because then you see it and you're like, oh, wow, do I really need to do that? Am I really noticing a difference with that? And this way, then we can monetize each of the ingredients that you're putting in the diet and we can add it all up and say, oh, it costs X amount of dollars to feed each horse per day. So this is a horse in early lactation. There is no other horse on the planet that has higher requirements for nutrients than a horse in early lactation. Um, so good hay, alfalfa, it's just 3 ounces. If you got good hay, though, we're still not feeding a boatload of grain. 3 ounces of orange, and you can see this diet. This is one of the better diets that I've got because we don't have a lot of excess anywhere. Now the vitamin E, um, this program says that 500 IUs a day is the required. That is what the NRC has set, but nutritionists in general say that the requirement is about 2,000 IUs a day. So it looks like it's over the top, but it's not. It's perfect. You can see, again, having a mare in early lactation does cost more than having a horse in maintenance, but if you don't have any money, maybe you don't breed as many horses this year if we're trying to cut costs because it does cost money to raise those babies. Early lactation, another example, bumping up the amount of oats, adding oil. Um, you have to factor this in. I think when you're selling horses, and now as well, selling horses is it's crazy money in selling horses, but you have to factor in what you're feeding them. When you can justify the price that you're putting on a foal when you decide to sell it, and you're kind of factoring in all of the costs that have gone into that, you got to factor in the mare cost as well. And what does it cost to keep her, to feed her, and doing this and having a good handle on the amount of money it costs to keep that mare, then I think you can work out and you can justify pricing of animals. And it's not just then pulling numbers out of the air because so and so sold a horse for this, so I'll try and sell it for that. And then when a customer comes to buy a horse from you, then you have a bit better idea and you can have more of a justification for how you priced that horse. Anyway, so ultimately, horses live in a state of stress. We've done webinar after webinar about all the stress that we put on horses. Um, not all horses are exercising a bunch. We're changing their feed. Maybe there's just all different things that change. And we are feeding horses every day. We're feeding them hay every day. We're potentially feeding them grain or some kind of concentrate every day. And we want to make sure that they're absorbing that and digesting that and utilizing that as best as they possibly can. I'll say it over and over and over again. The DDA, the digestive feed additive, that is the best money that you can spend, right? Um, it's very inexpensive per ounce per day. Um, the prices when I did it, these numbers, it was 23 cents an ounce, even at 50 cents an ounce. It's so inexpensive to feed your horse. The benefits far outweigh the cost. It's literally the cheapest thing you can buy for your program. Every horse should be on it. Best money you'll spend. It's going to maximize everything else you put in your horse's mouth. And I'll just leave you with this. So every day, every horse every day should have the DDA, but I will leave you with this. What does it cost you not to feed your horse properly, right? We all want to know how to do it cheaper, but if you do it cheaper and you cut a bunch of corners, what's that going to cost you, right? It's going to cost you more in farrier bills. It's going to cost you more in vet bills because your horse's feet will be terrible. I guarantee your vet will be out more often because there'll be more colic or more digestive upsets. Um, you'll be buying a bunch of other things that you don't really need because they're not going to be recovering well. You're going to be creating more problems that then you'll have to try and fix by not doing it right the first time. So, when you want to maximize your budget, feed your horses on a budget, or a customer comes to you and says, I think I need to cut out a bunch of stuff, there are some things that we can certainly cut out, right? You know, maybe we can ride our horses a little bit more and we can cut out a calming supplement because we're not quite sure whether it's working for our horse but basic things like a good vitamin and mineral and a good digestive supplement, don't take them out. They should be the last things that go out. Good quality hay, last thing to go out. With that, I'll take any questions.